In today's report, audaciously enough, I'm going to have a crack at answering your questions and addressing your comments relating to the BYD Shark 6 plug-in hybrid ute. Such an exciting new entrant in the market, and it really has taken online ignorance to dizzying new heights. At least it has in the comments feed. That's next. I'm John Cadogan from AutoExpert.com.au. New cars cheap, but Australia only. Website. Okay, let's kick off with a relatively informed question, shall we? From an dude named Dave Ogilvy, who goes blah, 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 usual suck kind of thing. And I'm sure he doesn't sound anything like this, but let's just do it for, I don't know, old time's sake or Christmas or something. Or have a Shark on order, and it appears to tick every box except for some of its off-road capability as seen in the Car Expert review. The lesser experts. Anyway, I don't know why you would watch, but actually they're pretty good. Paul in particular is great. If only he could lose that vaguely sort of homoerotic wave at the beginning, I think that would be a net improvement to the show. But anyway, he has 500,000 subscribers now, so who am I to judge? Maybe I should do the homoerotic wave every episode. I don't think so. Anyway, if you're not familiar with that, they took this pre-production Shark 6 and poked it up a reasonably ambitious hill, but nothing, your average internal combustion, low-range, four-wheel drive wouldn't get up with aplomb, and it failed to proceed. Anyway, he says, there has been a ridiculous amount written and said online about this, and I'm sure most of it is uninformed bullshit. Yeah, well, if you're talking about online content generally, yeah, most of it is. So, are you able to distill the facts for me? Yeah, dude, I'll have a crack. To keep it relatively brief, the Shark struggled to climb up a moderately steep hill, and the issue wasn't a lack of traction, it was an inability to spin the wheels at all. The motors produce a huge amount of torque. I don't think it's that much. How much do the motors produce? I wrote it down here somewhere. It's 310 newton meters, I think, for the electrical system, and another 260 from the combustion engine, which doesn't engage the powertrain at low speeds. So we're talking about 310 newton meters. That's less than a typical diesel engine in the segment, but of course the gearing is different, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I'm not sure what the single gear reduction is, but I would assume it's far less of a reduction than a proper low-range transfer case. So the torque multiplication of the wheels is likely far less than an internal combustion four-wheel drive. Yeah, from a pure gearing point of view, I'd say that's the case, but operationally, combustion engines make their maximum torque at diesels, turbocharged diesels, like 1,500 to 2,500 kind of thing for their peak torque, whereas electric motors make their peak torque when they're stalled, don't they, like at 0 RPM. So they don't need the same gearing to deliver the same performance. I mean, there are two functions of gearing, torque multiplication and speed reduction, and you really need the speed reduction in a combustion powertrain because you can't have the engine spinning at walking pace any other way. I mean, if you didn't have the gear reduction, it would stall, irrespective of the torque multiplication. Dave goes on and says, the car reviewed was a pre-production model with traction control reportedly not fully tuned. Additionally, its gearing, whatever that entails in a single-speed EV, was optimised for on-road performance and a high top speed, resulting in less torque at low speeds than we can expect in the production version. So my main question is, am I overthinking this? No, I don't think you're overthinking it. I think you're making a fundamental mistake, Dave, but we'll get to that in just a sec. Once the production version software is sorted, will the Shark's electric torque likely be sufficient for moderate off-roading? Well, you're asking me to predict the future here and get inside the minds of a whole bunch of Chinese engineers, and that is kind of difficult for me from a headspace point of view. Or are there inherent mechanical constraints that can't be overcome with software, making the Shark unsuitable for off-roading in the same way my current Pajero Sport is? I think he means is suitable for the Pajero Sport. So I don't think there's anything inherent in the machine that stops it being better at going off-road. I think this is a software quote-unquote problem. And the essential thing here, I think it's important to realise that with the emerging brands from China, they're operating in this really accelerated, some would say crunched R&D time frame. And I suspect they've got a whole bunch of propeller heads walking around with laptops and an OBD2 plug-in so that they can just try out different versions of the software. I'm pretty sure that because these vehicles are being deployed so quickly, that on-the-fly sort of running fixes are still being implemented to things like this. And I wouldn't expect that a whole bunch of Chinese propeller head engineers would have much familiarity with the demands of off-roading, at least in Australia, right? Because it's just such a different usage case. I could see them being familiar with picking up building materials and taking them from A to B and using the vehicle for general transportation and allowing it to drive down a dirt road and things of this nature. But for actual sort of hardcore off-road R&D, I think that might still be a bit of a learning experience for them. However, with the software, I think that's going to be the fix for that on the balance of probability, but how the fuck would I know? I just know that having driven the Mitsubishi Outlander plug-in hybrid, which is remarkably similar in its layout, it's actually pretty good at moderate off-roading. And by that, I took it there with Mitsubishi for a few days in the Flinders Ranges a couple of years ago now, 18 months, whatever, something like that ago. And it was surprisingly good off-road. Now, let's not forget that most off-roading is not the Rubicon Trail in Australia. Most off-roading is lots and lots of dirt road driving with a few gnarly little obstacles interspersed, right? So most off-roading in Australia is kind of brief climbs, brief obstacles, you get over them, then you drive a bit more on a track that you could drive down essentially with a Corolla. That's a fair summary of most of the off-roading I've done, although there are some ambitious drives that do require a lot of continuous off-road slogging, like the Canning Stock route, even though a lot of that is just driving down a dirt road. Simpson Desert, lots of sand hills, whatever there is, 1100 or something. And there are places like that, but also, you know, there's these icons like Cape York. And I remember, 20 years ago or something, we did this publicity stunt with Mazda where we drove two Mazda 929s to the tip of Cape York, right? So it depends what you mean by off-roading. If you've got some particular real gnarly rock hopping track near home and you go and have a crack at that, then yay. But most off-roading is kind of moderate driving with these gnarly obstacles, as I say, interspersed, and there's no reason why a plug-in hybrid can't be excellent at that. Because if you're in EV-only mode, as you are in a vehicle like the Shark at walking pace, then the electric motors are delivering their maximum torque because they are operating either stopped or at very low speed, and that's how to get the best torque response out of an electric motor. And there's no reason why they can't tune things like the whatever limit they've got imposed on powertrain performance. They could probably tune that a little bit by allowing it to just deliver more current to those motors at that time, in particular off-road modes, perhaps. Anyway, that's a sort of ones and zeros propeller head proposition for R&D, but I think they could fix that, and I think they could make it better. It's probably never going to be Land Cruiser 300 off-road, and I don't think it aspires to being that. So there's that for Dave to consider. But the fundamental problem with all of this stuff, and I'm kind of torn too, because I wanted to upgrade the Triton. I was thinking about buying a Tasman, and then I looked at it, and then I looked at the powertrain, and frankly, that was pretty disappointing. And I don't really want a Hilux or a Ranger, because Hilux, king of mediocrity. Ranger, I love the Ranger. I want to be in love with the Ranger, but I know what Ford's like from a reliability and customer service standpoint, and it's just frankly reprehensible. So there's that to consider, right? That's kind of important, at least the world where I live. Dave's big problem is that he's ordered something that he hasn't even had much of a chance to experience, and there's no sort of market feedback yet, except for a few journalists driving a few pre-production cars, so, who cares about that? We don't know exactly how good this vehicle's going to be. We don't know things like reliability and support. We don't know how tunable these pre-production, let's call them glitches, are. So there's no prerequisite on anyone, in my view, to be a lab rat in a mad experiment. And that's what you are. If a company prick teases any product, it doesn't matter which company, it can be Toyota, right? New product, brand new, all new product, don't buy it for 6 months. Like, let somebody else be the lab rat in the clinical trial, see how it goes. If it's great, then you wait 6 months. There'll be discounting because the initial wave of euphoria will have passed and the market will be fixated on something else that's shiny and new, and the company in question that you're focusing on will want to be selling that vehicle in some sort of significant quantity. You'll get a discount and you'll know. You'll know about reliability, support and performance because of all the other lab rats who've been on the little treadmill and doing their thing and reporting their experiences, and you'll just know whether it's right for you or not. But as things stand, if you've already ordered one, then you are in lab rat mode, and I hope the propeller head comes out and, plugs in and gives you a better off-road version of the software. But I think the Shark 6 could be moderately good at off-roading, but never a Land Cruiser or some other vehicle of that nature with proper low-range gearing and, well thought out, targeted to exactly that kind of performance. More of your questions in just a sec. My strong advice for you, if you are shopping for Christmas for some salient dude in your life, is lay off the frickin' socks and the undies and the aftershave. We've all got enough of that. We could go without. Dudes love torches, and fortuitously, Olight has a Christmas sale, which wraps up on Tuesday at midnight, so let's not be equivocating for too long. Biggest problem, of course, with Olight is you go to their website, there's 5,000 torches. How do you choose one? Let me make it really simple for you. I carry my aging Warrior Mini 2, and it is awesome because you can use the little barrel switch here to give you a little bit of light work, and you can adjust the levels when you've got plenty of time to make shit happen. But if you really need light in a hurry, it's got a tail switch, boom, and you can see that this has been biffed and dropped and scratched up against my Leatherman endlessly in my pocket, still functional after a couple of years. It's been upgraded. This is the direct upgrade. This is the Warrior Mini 3. It's an awesome torch, same kind of thing, only better. It's got a better tail switch and a better barrel switch, and it's a bit brighter and, just generally nicer. They don't get paid to make them worse, just like car companies when they release a new model. Got to make the new one better. If that's a bit big for the pocket because, skinny jeans or something, then you might consider the Warrior Nano, which is everything the Mini is, only shorter. So that's pretty cool. If there's a likely zombie apocalypse, but things might change, then the Warrior 3S is like, honey, I just pumped the Mini, and it's got the same switch on the barrel, switch on the tail. It's just a bit bigger and beefier. It's at the absolute upper limit of pocket friendliness, so that's awesome. And of course, if a zombie apocalypse is certain, the recently upgraded Warrior X4 is just great. It's too big for the pocket, so you get this thermoplastic sort of case, which does a great job on retention, but it's easy to deploy. And there's also a hidden USB-C charging port just in there, which is kind of cool. It doesn't affect the waterproof nature of the port, open or closed. It's still waterproof to, I'm going to say, 2 meters and drop tested similarly. It's got a nice ring to hang on to with the finger, a stainless steel bezel, so if you need to breach a car window to rescue, I don't know, a kid or a pet trapped in the heat, or help someone in the aftermath of a car crash. You get through a window, no problem. The pro tip there is look for the 90-degree corner at the top of the window of tempered glass, because that's where the residual stresses are poorly resolved, and that's the easiest place to smash the window. So, yeah, dude, this is great but bulky, I'd have to say. And if you're more of a vital sales representative or something, then you might consider the Arkfeld Ultra, which is made out of this spooky aluminium alloy that in many ways is kind of tougher than titanium. It is a torch, but it's also a laser pointer and a UV light. So UV light is really good if you want to play doctor in a hotel room or something, but it can also help you find scorpions. So if you're still looking for a Christmas present for, I don't know, ex-wife number 3, for example, then the scorpion detecting power of the Arkfeld Ultra is not to be underestimated. I'll put links to my preferred Olight torches in the description, and just remember the sale wraps up on Tuesday at midnight, so let's not be dilly-dallying, especially as all the good ones typically sell out pretty quickly during the sale. Okay, got this one now from Dave Purse 6566, who alleges, "You are missing the point." Don't hold back, Dave. Let me know what you really think. "Both these batteries will run out very quick." He doesn't say out, but that's what he means. "Will run very quick when towing." He means run out. "Then what are you left with? BYD. A 1.5 litre range extender not directly connected to the drivetrain." I'll address that a little bit later on, but that's bullshit, dude. The internal combustion engine in the BYD absolutely drives the front transaxle directly at speeds over 60 or 70 kilometres an hour if it needs to. So suck it up, put on your big boy pants, you're wrong. "Ford, a 2.3 turbo engine directly connected to the drivetrain, happy days. Ford used this smaller battery as a drivetrain supercharger, a performance benefit." Actually, dude, the Ranger plug-in hybrid, which he's talking about with the 2.3 EcoBoost engine, that is going to use the battery in EV mode as well. So it's not just a supercharger for the powertrain in the manner of the battery, for example, in, I don't know, Corolla hybrid or RAV4 hybrid. You can drive in EV only mode for some substantial distance, as I understand it, 45 Ks or something. So that statement's bullshit too, so well done. Plus Ford Pro Power on board, off-grid camping, which the BYD does better, incidentally, and ticking government boxes. Yeah, what Ford's actually doing with the Ranger plug-in hybrid is trying to deploy some more low CO2 emitting cars into the market so they don't have to pay big fuck off fines as a result of the new vehicle efficiency standard kicking in. So they're not so much ticking government boxes as avoiding fines by deploying the Ranger plug-in hybrid that doesn't measure up objectively against the BYD, and which normal drivers really aren't going to want. So there's that. Any benefit for driving to the shops? People are buying Toyota RAV4s. Now, as for this range extender thing, the best example of a range extender kind of setup, like, I don't know, a diminutive diesel-electric locomotive, diesel-electric locomotives, big diesel engine, generator, wires to the traction motors on the wheels. That's how they work, okay? That would be Nissan e-Power in a nutshell, right? The internal combustion engine in a Nissan e-Power hybrid powertrain does not ever directly drive any of the road wheels. It has to go through the electric system first, just in the same way that a diesel-electric locomotive does not ever drive any of its wheels directly via some sort of mechanical connection. It just doesn't work that way. The BYD does. So aside from all those things, Dave, you are absolutely right, dude. And as for any benefit for driving to the shops, people are buying Toyota RAV4s, well, obviously the big difference between a RAV4 hybrid and a plug-in hybrid is the EV-only operational mode, which is only available in the plug-in hybrid, right? So if you've got a plug-in hybrid in the driveway and your shops are, I don't know, 5 to 10 Ks away, then you can, if your battery is charged in the plug-in, you can just get in that vehicle, drive to the shops in EV mode, turn around, drive home in EV mode, plug it back in and go again for all of these short-range trips, which is, I don't know, a bit of an advantage potentially. In the RAV4, not so much. In fact, not at all. You're going to be using the combustion engine, turning and burning virtually the whole time to move. The battery is going to give you incidental performance because you'll be capturing some kinetic energy by virtue of regenerative braking, and you'll be able to use that to get going again, etc., which a plug-in hybrid also does. And now next, from Walda Marie, who says, "Are you filming this in the middle of night, or is mic broken?" English second language, perhaps. "Are you filming in middle of night, or is mic broken? What for you kick my dog and call him fuck off? Hasn't it?" Can you hear that now? Those bastards. Let's go and take a look, shall we? Okay, so grab your earmuffs, dude. We're going in. This is pretty confronting. Like, you know, come to Australia. If you're not from around here, it's freaking awesome. Like, just take a look at what I look at. And you can hear that, right? And if you're not from around here, you know, the cicadas in your neck of the woods are probably, you know, herbivores or something, but these are flesh eaters, these bastards, and they never shut up. Midnight, they're still cracking on, but, yeah, I guess it only goes for 16 frickin' weeks or something. Listen to that. It's like a crowd wave too. They go down and then they come up, and you can't even run the noise suppressing bloody filter in Premiere Pro because it, listen to that. How loud is that? Those bastards. On the news, like the tourists get taken by the hundreds. They go for a walk in the bush and they're never heard from again. They freaking paid for a return ticket too. So the best advice I can give you, dude, is if you visit Australia, just one way, because the things that can get you, Jesus, it never ends. So I hope that's cleared that up now. Where are we? Who next? Oh, this one's great. Shoffy, who says, "Hey John, you're not really comparing apples with apples. The BYD's like a diesel electric locomotive. The combustion engine just runs a generator, so you're always driving on electric power." Not the case, dude, sorry. "The problem is the generator is nowhere near 170 kilowatts of the electric motor, so if the battery goes flat, the vehicle is effectively in limp mode." How's the battery going to go flat? Exactly. Like, draw me the diagram, dude, because I'm not seeing it. We'll get to that. "The vehicle is effectively in limp mode and will not have anywhere near the 170 kilowatts of rated power." It's hard to talk like that. "The range, on the other hand, is a proper hybrid. The combustion engine drives a traditional drivetrain and is augmented by the electric motor. I would take the Ranger any day over the BYD. Hope this helps clarify how these things work." I love the way these, I'm just speaking generally now, not about this in particular, but I love the way the Dunning-Kruger types in the comments often suggest that they're being helpful by clarifying something that ordinary people might not understand, right? Now, this might surprise you, but I generally don't press the record button on the camera. There's no rolling the camera until I'm reasonably certain I know what the fuck I'm talking about. Call me old-timey, but that kind of matters to me. So I did have a fair bit of time investigating exactly how the BYD works. Now, I don't generally strawman people in the comments, so I just responded to Shofi, And I said, dude, the combustion engine also drives the wheels, just like a Mitsubishi plug-in hybrid, because guess what? It does. And then Shofi got back to me with more clarity on this issue. No, John, it does not. The BYD is a petrol motor that only drives a generator. Here you go. And there's a quote that's not a reference from it. It could be any uninformed bullshit. Like, you just go and find a piece of information online, copy it and paste it, and there's your proof of your hypothesis, right? It doesn't work like that. Anyway, the quote he gives me is, unlike traditional diesel utes, the 2025 BYD Shark 6 plug-in hybrid ute features electric motors on each axle, a petrol engine as a generator, and lacks low-range gearing and diff locks. All of that is true, but it also drives the front wheels, because how the fuck else could that work? Because the total system power is like 321 kilowatts, and the electric system power is 170. So the extra 151 has to come from somewhere, doesn't it? It can't just be magicked up. There's that. So I've gotten back to him once again. I didn't straw man him. I said, dude, it does drive the front wheels. Over 70 k's an hour, an automated clutch joins the combustion engine to the front transaxle. The electric powertrain is 170 kilowatts max. The total system power is 321. That's how this works. And then, because a few other people made similar allegations in the comments, I started to engage in a rare crisis of self-doubt, like, have I fucked up badly here? So I took the unprecedented step of actually reaching out to BYD, and I asked them for some clarity on this, and I'm going to read you directly their response to me on that. They said, quote, the combustion engine is able to directly drive the wheels and starts to engage around 60 to 70 kilometres per hour. BYD's dual mode technology supports both parallel and series hybrid modes. So, series hybrid is combustion engine driving a generator pumping up a battery driving the motors on the axles, okay? Series. Parallel hybrid mode, combustion engine engaged, in this case, with the front transaxle, and electric system also powering both axles in parallel. Makes sense, right? Parallel, series, it does both things. Now, the reason the BYD only engages at 60 to 70 kilometres an hour with the combustion engine is really simple. It's because there's no gearbox. There's no gearbox between the front axle and the output shaft of the combustion engine. There's a transaxle, right? So a clutch just grabs the crankshaft of the combustion engine and engages it with the transaxle. It's a one-to-one drive. And obviously, because low-speed operation like that would stall the combustion engine because it can't run that slow, it can only, quote-unquote, kick in at 60 to 70 k's an hour when it can be one-to-one with the powertrain, right? That's how this works. It's how it works on the BYD. It's how it frickin' works on the Mitsubishi Outlander. I interviewed the engineer in charge of all of that, mechanical and electrical stuff with the Outlander, their evangelist, if you like. When I was in the Flinders Ranges with them, I got a really good, concise, definitive explanation about exactly how that works. And it's the same with the BYD because the fundamental modes are the same, series and parallel. So you got to choose who to believe, right? And these definite dipshits in the comments, they operate behind fake names. They go out and weaponize their confirmation bias by frickin' finding information online that doesn't definitively prove a point one way or the other, but supports their preference for how they want things to operate. If you want to be an intelligent, critical thinker, you have to find out how it actually works. That's how we got 12 men standing on the fucking moon. Who next? We got Ace VR4, who also says, The BYD engine does not ever drive the wheels or spell was told this from BYD, which is also all in lowercase, so you know you're dealing with not technical and literary genius, don't you? We've covered that one off. The tiny engine generator is not 300 kilowatts. Physics is a cruel mistress. Yeah, okay, dude, but, you know, the tiny petrol engine is turbocharged and it makes 135 kilowatts. And just to put that in perspective, okay, power, engineering for dummies, all right, physics, bare-knuckle physics for dummies. Torque is kind of irrelevant. Power is what makes shit happen. That's important to realise. 135 kilowatts is available from that combustion engine. And yes, it is pretty small displacement, but 135 is not insubstantial in the context of mid-range utes like Navara, Triton, BT, like that. They're all making in the ballpark of 150 kilowatts, aren't they? So that is the maximum accelerative performance you can derive from one of those utes, is derived from ballpark 150 kilowatts. The combustion engine in the BYD makes 135, which is pretty close. And I also don't see how the battery's ever going to go flat, which is the next thing. Ace VR4 says physics is a cruel mistress. So when the battery goes flat, it'll be a slug, especially if towing. Rangers, all, meaning ill, stick to my Triton with no capital T and Challenger with no cap C. So thanks, Ace VR4. Appreciate that feedback. Now, when the battery goes flat, it'll be a slug, unquote. How the fuck are you ever going to flatten the battery towing? Okay? This is a reasonable question because let's say you intentionally flatten the battery, it's got 0, and you put a 2.5 tonne trailer behind the BYD, it will have to get going off the battery to some extent. So the battery in a BYD will never quote unquote go flat because you always need it to move the vehicle to some degree, right? So it'll probably just stop depleting itself at 20% or something of that nature. And then the combustion engine will use its excess production to charge the battery back up. Now, if you've towed 2.5 tonnes before and you've done it with a diesel ute, how often have you done that with 4,000 RPM on the dial and maximum fuel delivery? Like, I know diesels don't have throttles, but accelerator pressed flat to the boards. And the correct answer there is never or briefly. Right? You might see that for overtaking briefly, but you're not going to drive across the nullarbor or do any other sustained driving, making maximum power. The conclusion you can draw from this is that you never need 150 kilowatts in a sustained way to tow a 2.5 tonne van. It's with a ute. It's just not required. So the combustion engine in the BYD always makes sufficient power so that it has some reserve to operate, to harvest some that's not being used for motive power at highway speeds and pump it into the generator and the battery. It's physically not possible to have a set of driving situations, a driving environment that's not entirely artificial like a dynamometer or something, where you are driving and you need 135 kilowatts continuously. It just doesn't happen. You can climb a hill, you might need 135 kilowatts for, 5 minutes or something. But even then you're going to be slowing down for curves because gradients usually mean negotiating some mountain range, and there's not usually a straight road over a mountain range. So even then, you don't do sustained maximum power operations kind of ever for outside of a lab, like an engine performance lab, dynamometer, test cell, whatever. You just don't do it in the real world. So all these geniuses in the comments going, well, when the battery goes flat, how the fuck are you going to do that, dude? Like, it's just not possible in a highway driving scenario to flatten the battery. So yeah, hypothetically, if you disconnected the battery and it was unable to drive do any powertrain motivation whatsoever, you'd still have 135 kilowatts on tap. And I'd suggest that even in any of the acknowledged diesel utes that are decent performers out there on the highway, Tritons and Navaras and BTs and Isuzu D-Maxes, you're still not using 135 kilowatts to move from A to B in any sort of sustained way. So that's just uninformed bullshit that sounds good at the pub with your equally uneducated mates, I'd suggest. And finally, from Paul Wilson, 7622, who goes, how much less or more cargo/towing capacity can this woeful ute carry? By the sound of it, a lot less due to the extra mass of an additional battery and electric motor. This sounds like the booby prize of utes. Yeah, okay, maybe it does sound like the booby prize of utes, but let us look. I did a comparison and actually wrote down numbers before sprouting uninformed bullshit. I know, I'm that old. The Ranger V6 Platinum, which is a nice conveyance if you like to live life on the edge vis-a-vis reliability and support. It's got a GVM of 3,300 and a curb weight of 2,388 kilos, right? So that means the payload is 912 kilos. And you'd have to take 350 away from that to tow at its maximum. So 350 away from that is like 560, something like that. Isn't it 562, something like that? That's kind of the payload that's left if you tow 3.5 tonnes, which is the maximum for the Ranger. But if we just say that the total payload for a Ranger V6 Platinum is 912, okay? The BYD has a GVM of 3,500 and a curb weight of 2,710, so it's roughly 322 kilos heavier than the Ranger. It's got a payload of 790. Right, so the difference there is 122 kilos worth of payload, right? Even though the difference in curb weight is substantially more than that. So it's like this, nearly 800 kilos of payload for the BYD and just over 900 for the Ranger V6 Platinum. I don't see that as entirely woeful. I just don't. And just before I let you go, I want to cover off another one of, Homoerotic Waving's videos, which just lobbed. I watched it last night. It was essentially a drag race between the BYD and Paul's Ranger Raptor, okay? And that was really interesting because they did 3 back-to-back 400-metre drag races, okay? And the BYD won every one of those races, although the margin kept shrinking as the battery in the BYD became depleted. So it's fair to say that that's kind of an unrealistic test as well, because very hard to drive like that and deplete the battery that severely, that quickly in a normal situation, especially if you're concerned about losing your license. So there's that. The lowest reading that he got on the battery was in the 70-something percent, and that obviously did knock back just the top layer, the veneer of performance off the BYD, but not sufficiently so that it was slower than the Ranger Raptor over 400 metres. The two vehicles were kind of neck and neck, with the Raptor slightly in front on a rolling start from 50 k's an hour, which was kind of interesting as well. So it seems to me that the main advantage of the BYD from a standing start perspective is the electric drive system and its ability just to go and deliver all that tractive effort to the wheels just almost immediately, whereas there's still a dwell time with a combustion powertrain where the torque converter has to spin up and you have to actually transmit that throttle input into tractive effort at the wheels, and there's a few processes that have to occur there. And most of the advantage that the BYD had seemed to be as a result of that, and less as a result of it being intrinsically superior We're talking about vehicles with more than 300 kilowatts of powertrain performance, though. So it's also fair to say that for most of us, they would be beyond adequate in a straight line. And I really don't think there's anything to worry about in the context of the battery and the combustion engine working together to give you acceptable performance, either for overtaking out there on a proper road or for sustained towing either. I mean, both of those things on paper are perfectly doable with the BYD. This campfire beard stroking bullshit about if the battery goes flat, I don't see anybody ever doing that. And from the point of view of just driving really, really fast in a straight line, you've got the BYD for 60 or the Ranger Raptor for 90, and you can have a hell of a nice time for a few weeks in Tuscany for the difference in price.